Popeye, yeah, it's hilarious.
Well, the one thing that I loved about that is that it showed your sense of humor, and in your music, your solo music, definitely, even though it's not like funny, except for songs like the Hate Song, which
the Hate Song's totally funny, yeah, for sure.
You're an unswattable fly. You make me puke. Pretend you're my friend and you shoot up like a rocket made of wax. I know the best revenge is happiness and some success. All of us will meet our ends and I'll enjoy the wait. This one goes out to the ones I hate. You putrid.
But I can definitely feel your sense of humor in that. And I read somewhere that you've worked with, all right, so you've worked with Spinal Tap, obviously, comedy, but you've also done some work with Tony Clifton.
Yes, yeah, that's, I know,
gosh.
I figure like I've got the bookmarks of like weird,
Crazy.
I was Tony Clifton's musical director at some point in the last decade.
How did that happen?
It was completely randomly. My husband and I went to this bar that this called the Monty, that our friends, it's their bar, and we were just sitting there at the bar shooting the shit, and we meet this guy, and he's like works for Tony Clifton, and they're looking for I just literally got that job for meeting a guy at a bar.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And for anybody who doesn't know that, Tony Clifton is from the days of Andy Kaufman. It's just go YouTube it, because it's brilliant stuff. It's just amazing. And I also saw an episode of Inside Ursula Hitler's Head with Sweetie and Mr. Meanie that you did.
Oh, that's right. That was just Ursula Hitler is someone that I wanted to meet in person, and I have reached out to her, and I think she's very shy and just prefers to be sort of like an internet friend.
I think most people with the last name Hitler are pretty shy.
I think that may be not her, born last name. I think that may be, but she I don't know. That was like one of those, and I've had a few wonderful experiences like this where I had posted something on YouTube, and then she had posted like, Abby Travis is wonderful, or, she just was like, liking my work. And then I was like, well, who's this random person that's actually interested in what I'm doing, of which there may be 7. So I went and looked her up, and she made this whole, animated. Did you see the video that she did for Lightning Squared? It's off of 4. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And so that was just like this nice person that like I would still like to meet. So if you're out there, Ursula, best wishes to you.
So the interview you ended up doing with Sweetie and Mr. Meanie was hilarious, and the outtakes were just as funny. It was great.
Well, that was one where I do remember that, and she was astute enough to put together the outtakes, because she sent me a bunch of questions via email or something, and then I just set up the iPad or the computer or whatever and pretended that someone was asking me the questions, and then answered the questions. And then I just sent her the whole thing, and so she was the one that figured out that the outtakes were funny. I wasn't even really aware of that. Yeah.
Well, she did a great job, because it cracked me up, especially with the camera falling, and then that was good. So now you started another band called Sumo Princess. And that's with Gene Troutman, who was in Eagles of Death Metal and Queens of Stone Age. Tell me a little bit about how you guys started that band.
Well, I actually started that band. Originally, I had another drummer named Chris Nakata, who was the guy that played drums in the Rails, which was my second band. Mm-hmm. So he and I'll tell you how I started the band. I was sitting on my friend's, in my on my friend's toilet in San Francisco, reading Rolling Stone magazine.
We're all good bands get started.
Exactly, in the loop. And so I'm reading Rolling Stone magazine, and I see this article about royal blood, and I'm like, wow, that sounds interesting. And so I went and looked at and heard what they sounded like on YouTube, and I was like, fucking hey, why didn't I think of that? That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And so I actually haven't listened to them since that one time because I don't want to be too influenced by them, although they were definitely the inspiration for the idea of doing a bass and drum, band with just bass and drums.
Okay.
And so that was kind of the idea. And it was also part of the inspiration was like I had been doing so much work as an employee / hired gun where, when that's your job, it's a wonderful job and you get to make other people's music sound the best you can. But it's also a job where you really need to know how to keep your mouth shut and nod. I mean, it's like any other job where you're, an employee. So that coupled with my sort of just really at the time when I started doing Sumo Princess, I got so annoyed with just all the music I was hearing on the radio really sounded the same to me in terms of like, man, these people are all using the same plugins. This is all totally quantized.
Yeah.
I can hear the auto tune. The way the compression settings are, I was like, this is so fucking boring and corporate and not interesting to me that I wanted to start a band that was like the opposite of all that. So like when Sumo Princess records, I think we may have used a click track on like one or two songs and the rest of it has no click.
Oh, wow.
There's no we don't fuck around. It's like it's totally going back to the, back in the olden days or whatever, meaning when I was, in my 20s, and it's very reactive music, and it's also loose, but kind of purposefully loose. It's not, super tight, and no two shows are the same. We of course will play our songs, but there's going to be like improvised parts, and the solos are not the same every time, and there's sometimes if something goes wrong, it just turns into a whole song that happens on the spot.
That's the stuff I love.
Yeah, and that me too, because believe me, half the jobs I've had, you're playing the exact same fucking thing every single night.
Yeah.
And some of them more so than others to a bunch of backing tracks,
Yeah.
But not all, some bands are worse about that or better about that than others. So that was like my impetus for that. So after I decided to go with a different drummer than my first drummer, I just asked Gene, who's like a good buddy of mine. I've been friends with Gene since the 80s, and he's a great drummer, and he's my friend. So what's not to like, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the music is fantastic. I heard a live version of you guys doing the Star-Spangled Banner.
Yeah.
That was so great. When you started off playing it reminded me a lot of the Chris Squire version from the Yes Years box set that he did. And then it goes totally crazy.
I have to admit, I did not even know that Chris Squire did a version of that.
Oh, really? I
was totally coming from Jimi Hendrix on the Mike Douglas show, I think it was the Mike Douglas show that he did it on. Hold on one second. I got to feed my dogs, so it's going to sound weird for 1 second, but they're getting really bouncy. Yeah, hi, I'm back. Sorry, the dogs are just like they usually get fed around 6.
Oh, no problem, no problem. What kind of dogs are they?
One is like a lab pit something or other. And then another one is like we think he's a boxer Ridgeback.
Oh, wow.
And then the little one she was my father's dog, and he passed away, so now she's our doggy, and she's a little Karen Terrier, like one of those Toto dogs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I've got a boxer Australian Shepherd mix.
Oh, wow, that dog must be really smart and really energetic.
He's not as energetic as you'd think. Maybe we lazied him up. I don't know, but he's he is very smart, but he's also goofy. He's a little clumsy, and he's only 3. So he's still a little bit of a puppy in him, and he's tricolor. So he's the best though. The best dog I've ever had, and we named him Hammond after Richard Hammond from Top Gear. And
wow!
And he's just the coolest dog I've ever had. I love him to death. He looks like a little miniature Rottweiler, actually. He's great. I'll send you a picture of him later. He's just the coolest dog ever.
Please, I'm a huge dog person.
Oh yeah.
Although I do like, I'm allergic to kitties, so I can't have them. But I appreciate like grumpy looking cats. Yeah. I'm a big fan of like smush face.
Yes.
Just photos of like grumpy smush face Persian cats that look really angry. I like that.
My wife is the same. She's allergic too, but she loves looking at the memes and the pictures of it's hilarious. But Hammond's just hilarious. He was a rescue, and we got him. He was like 17 weeks when we got him. He's got the dock tail already. He got neutered way too early. Our vet, when we got him, took him and asked if we had this done. Well, no, it was done when we got him, and he's like, it was in way too early. So that may attribute to a little bit of his goofiness, but he's such a cool dog.
Well, it's funny. Floyd, the one that's he's definitely part boxer, but he looks like he could be part Ridgeback too. He does not, he has, his whole long tail, which is almost 2 feet long, I think, or a foot and a half. Well, I'm really a bad judge of visual things. It could be a foot and a half. It's definitely over a foot. And I'll tell you, if you have a coffee table and a glass, it's, could be trouble, because I sometimes, I'm like, I think I know why people did that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never do that to an animal, but I'm like, I can understand the logic behind it.
Yeah.
He's right at that height where it's like, wham, you can knock over a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Hammy's the same. We call him Hammy or Ham. He's the same way. He's about 65 pounds, so he's right at that level where he'll walk around the coffee table, and if he had a tail, he'd be knocking everything over. So
yeah,
but he's a sweetheart. So, all right. So back to the music. I've heard a couple of the new tracks off the Sumo Princess album, and I got to tell you, Kalima is insane. I love that song. What did you do to the vocals on that? Because they're just crazy.
Vocoder.
That's what I was gonna throw it out, but I didn't want to. I was afraid I would be wrong and sound really dumb. So,
well, you were right. You're really smart.
Because I was going to say, it sounds kind of like Sun and Sail Club or that Neil Young Trans album, but it actually sounds a lot better than those two, because there's almost no emotion in either of those albums with the vocals. And, there's not a whole lot of emotion coming through the vocoder on those. On Kalima, it's definitely emotive. Is there something else that you did a little differently than the guys may have done?
I may have some secret studio tricks that I'm not going to reveal.
Okay, that's fair enough. But it's You Will Rise has been stuck in my head for days. But
thank you. That's a very pretty song.
It is. I love it. It literally, I'm not even exaggerating when I say it's been stuck in my head since you sent me the track. But how did you get the gnarly ass bass sound that you've got in Kill the King and Kalima? Because that is some wicked sounding bass.
That is, I think for both of those two, it's called The Fuzz War by Death by Audio. That's the pedal I'm using. Death
by Audio is awesome. One of these days, it's my dream.
Now I've given that studio secret. It's not fair to hoard. It's not fair to hoard the fuzz, but yeah, I think that I know that also there's a point in Kill the King where I use the Pog at 2,
Okay.
Like when it goes to that end part where it's got the word harmonies.
Yes.
Like I'm using the Pog also, but for Kalima, the bass is pretty much just straight up fuzz war. Yeah, fuzz war through an SVT, like that's definitely having that's one thing, touring these days on a low budget, like with a small band like mine, I have had great experiences using now with bass, they make these teeny little like amps that actually sound terrific.
Oh, really?
But with what Sumo Princess is doing, because I want to have some feedback, weird stuff that I can ride around on.
Yes.
And I actually need the big gnarly tube amp. So definitely part of the sound is that fuzz war, but it's also like an Ampeg, SVT.
Did you see
part of it?
Did you see that enormous Ampeg amp that was like 8 feet tall at NAMM this year?
I got to play 12 chimes at noon on one of those days through that, which was, I have to say, quite a bit of fun.
That is amazing. I saw Tony Franklin playing that, and that was just crazy. In fact, he put his bass up to it to try to get it to feed back, and they yelled at him on the video that he put out on Facebook. They yelled at him and told him not to do it. So.
For my one, I just went for they gave me some 5 string, it was like a 5 or 6 string bass. I was like, whatever, and I just went for the total, just like doom, just like, I just went for, which is often my MO at those kind of music things. There's just there's a side to whenever I go to those things, all the bass players are either slapping or playing like Jaco Pastorius.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that's always just wants to get a little silly, it makes,
Well, you mentioned using a Death by Audio, and that's either a Death by Audio or a ZVEX pedal. I play a little guitar. I'm not good. I'm not in a band or anything. I just play at my house. But that's one of the things that one of these days I'm dying to get is one of those. So are you a gear hound? Do you have a lot of bass gear that you collect?
I am not a gearhead. I have a pretty good pedal board now that I've put together kind of through trial and error and experimenting with different things. Because some of the stuff in Sumo Princess, I want to actually have the sounds kind of dictate the part. Like, in for example, like in You Will Rise, that part that I play under the verse, that that part, yes. That was something where I wanted to find, have the sound of it almost inspire what I was going to play rather than just, playing something and trying to dial in a sound. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that I do have a fairly decent pedal collection now, and then my husband does sort of get things, and maybe for my birthdays or Christmases or things, there's a new thing. And I have, but I really only have like 3 main basses that I play that are the same 3 main basses that I've been playing since the early 90s.
Since Spinal Tap.
Well, no, since Vanessa Parody, actually, because I got the Music Man after that gig. And but I do have several amps, because certain things are good for certain. Like, I'm not going to bring an SVT and an 8x10 if I'm backing up like a singer-songwriter at like a small club.
Right.
Because people just get mad.
Yeah.
So I am not, and I'm also not one of those people that knows what kind of pickup, I'm super not techie. I mean, I know how to I only learn as much about stuff as I need to know to make it work properly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'm not one of those people that some people love to know how things work, and they take apart radios and put them back together as children, and then they grow up and they invent synthesizers.
That's
or whatever.
my son. Oh my god,
not that person.
That is my son to a T.
I'm more I just want the shit to work as quickly and as easily as possible. I'm the opposite of that. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Now, when is the Sumo Princess album going to be released?
The Sumo Princess album, which is called When an Electric Storm, that is being released on May 8th on Ruined Vibes Records. And that is also the first day of our tour opening up for the Meat Puppets on the East Coast of the United States.
Oh, wow. Okay. So are the tour dates completely set for that tour?
Yeah.
All right. I've got to look that up, because I need to know if you guys are playing in my area, because I've got to come and see that.
I don't think that on the run that we're doing, we're making it that far south.
I think I saw, if it's on your website, I saw a couple down as far as like Philly.
Yeah, that may be the farthest south we're going. I'm not sure if we're doing like Maryland, and I know we're not doing DC. I think Philly might, but that's not that far. You can just hop on the train.
I've got family up there. I may have to make an excuse to come up and see family for a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find you on social media? Where can they purchase the album when it's released? Or do a pre-order?
Well, also, what they can do now is purchase. We made last year. We released 2 7-inches, and they are available on Sumo Princesses. You can go to sumoprincessband.com, which will take you to our Bandcamp page where you can get physical singles. And what we did is we collaborated with 9 different artists. So we did 2 different singles. One was in a version of 5, and the other one was in versions of 4. So there's 4 different versions of one of them and 5 different versions of the other.
Oh, wow.
So those are like collectible picture discs done by artists.
That's awesome.
Super awesome. Yeah. So those came out last year. And then there's also, you can Sumo Princesses, you can buy our stuff on like iTunes or Amazon, or again, I really like Bandcamp because they give the best splits to the artist,
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I just completely, that was really like I lost the ability to speak there for a second.
That's okay.
So, Sumo Princess is on Instagram. Sumo _Princess _band is on Instagram. Sumo Princess is on Facebook. Abby Travis is on Facebook. Abby Travis on Instagram. Abby Travis. And my name is spelled ABBY. That is because sometimes people put an E or an I or an IE, but it's just ABBY. And okay. I'm also on the Twitter, but I try every time I go on there, I wind up getting in some political argument with someone, and so I'm.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I try to avoid that.
I'm on Twitter too.
I just try to.
What?
I just release the links of the show on Twitter. I try to stay off that mess as much as possible.
Yeah, it's. Who's the best people on Twitter are the comedians, because they're so good at also finding a 2-sentence phrase that sums everything up and that's succinct and straight to the point and hilarious. I'm really long-winded, so it's maybe not the best medium for me, but I do enjoy following the comedians on Twitter. And then I also have a podcast that I've just launched in the past month and a half. Called Sounds Off with Abby Travis. So it's an interview podcast as well, but it's a little different in that I interview other musicians on location and in the verite style. So, for example, like Exene Cervinka of the band X and I went to a farmer's market in Orange, California, and then we talked about stuff and
baseball. I remember.
I know. See, who knew, great. Right?
Exactly. I didn't.
Amazing.
I love
that story.
Yeah, I do another podcast that's sports related. One of my buddies is a producer for the Jim Jeffries show on Comedy Central, and we're always looking for guests. So if Exene ever wants to talk about the Dodgers, we talk a lot of Dodgers.
I bet you. I mean, I don't know, but I had no idea that she was such a huge baseball fan, and I loved that story so much. And there's a side of me that thinks she might have more fun talking about baseball than she would about her other stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I certainly can't answer for her. But she definitely. I thought that was the most charming story. I loved it.
I loved it too, and I loved the interactions you had with Norwood Fisher from Fishbone. That was great, and the story from Steve McDonald of your brother saving everybody's life in Red Cross when the driver fell asleep in the station wagon. That was. I
know. I had no. My brother is a very humble, sweet guy. He's he's very quiet. He's totally. Not words. People are like, you guys are related. What? But I had no idea that had happened at all. So He didn't never mention it because he was, I think, still maybe even in high school or barely out of high school at that time. So if he had told my parents that, they would have flipped out. You know what I mean? So
probably. Then, yeah, absolutely. So I love the show. It's great. I wish I could do something in that verite style like you do. Unfortunately, I still got a day job, so I can't do it. I got to work during the day. I can't take people out around DC because I think that would be amazing. But do you have any?
You can maybe, you could find like Ian McKay and go walk around and drink juice together.
There you go. we can do all that straight edge stuff. So do you have any new shows coming out?
Yeah, I do. I have some exciting guests coming up.
Awesome.
I just interviewed Alan Johannes last week.
He
love
that guy.
He too. He's such a genius.
Oh, and he's so underappreciated. So many people don't know who he is.
Have you seen An Unfinished Plan, the movie about? It's like it'll break your heart.
No.
You can stream it on Amazon.
Okay.
Look it up. It's a film about him and about Natasha.
Oh gosh.
And it's also like, the first person that talks about him is Chris Cornell, and you're like, fuck, that guy's dead too.
Yeah.
And it's just like so heartbeaking, you know what I mean? But it's a really well-made movie, well-directed, and I recommend it highly to everyone everyone should watch that.
Absolutely. I sent him a message to see if he wanted to come on, but I haven't heard back yet. That was a while ago. But he doesn't know who I am. Of course, you didn't know who I was either until Scott Reeder introduced. And I didn't know Scott until Shay Dorval introduced me to him. So I think you met her at NAMM with Scott, right?
Is that the Irish lady that's the bass player?
No, she's the Canadian singer.
Oh, Shay. Yeah, I loved her.
She's awesome.
Are you kidding? She was fantastic. I was so disappointed to find out that she lived in Canada. I thought, this is going to be my new buddy. Shay's awesome. I didn't hear what you said. I thought you said Shane.
Oh, no,
yeah, I'm totally pro Shay. Yeah.
Oh, she was like the second or third person I interviewed for this show. She's like one of the first. She was episode number 4. Because I realized I did like 3 interviews in a row, like right back to back to back. And I use the same software for the sports show, and I didn't change anything, but I didn't realize with the sports show, they record their end in LA and I record my end here, and then they send me the file and I just merge everything in the computer. With this, I record off the phone here, and I didn't realize I had a noise gate on my software that anytime anybody backed away from the mic or spoke softly or anything, it would clip it. And so the first 3 interviews I did were Steve Turner from Mudhoney, Jerry Gaskell from King's X, and then Jordan Zadarozzi from Blink of the Star, and Kelly Scott from Failure together. And I had to. Oh,
I know Kelly. I think Kelly might have played on some of my solo stuff.
Oh yeah, Kelly's awesome. I've had him. I've had him a bunch.
I could be wrong too. I mean, I have no. I know that Kelly and I played together though. I've played with him before.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. He's a nice guy.
He is so, and his wife is so sweet. Priscilla, she's a great photographer. So.
Oh, cool.
So you should check out Priscilla C. Scott on Instagram. She does some great work. So.
I will. Yeah, right on.
But thank you so much for coming on and spending some time. I know I've kept you for quite a while. I really do appreciate you telling me some of these great stories about Spinal Tap. And
the Spinal Tap story is the best one.
It's my favorite.
I don't think I've ever told it in that detail. Much detail. I mean, it was so insane.
That was awesome.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you
so much. That was super fun, and I really appreciate you doing so much research, and I hope I wasn't all snotty about dude, that was 10 years later or anything like that,
No, not in the least.